Hey everybody, and welcome back to another Max Velocity weather forecast. And in today's forecast, we'll be breaking down a huge pattern change that is coming to the United States that is really going to change the weather for the rest of this month and as well as early February. And this will be from an omega block pattern, something that we usually do not see during the winter that strangely enough we are going to see during the end of this month into early February. I'll be giving you the latest breakdown on everything that you need to know in this forecast, and let's begin with this weather pattern that'll be impacting the United States as we head into the end of this month into early February. And again, there will be timestamps in the description, so if you want to jump ahead to like the precipitation or if you want to jump ahead to the temperatures, those will be down below. But this is what we're looking at in terms of our weather pattern right now in the United States. We have a large troughing feature across the southern tier of the United States, and this is going to allow for more showers and thunderstorms across the southeast. Actually, there is a slight risk of severe weather tomorrow across parts of Mississippi and Alabama, but this is going to be responsible for the showers and storms that we're going to see over the next 48 hours, in addition to the potential for a winter storm at the end of the weekend for parts of the Northeast. And we'll be talking more in depth about this later in this forecast. But once we go into Monday into Tuesday, after this trough leaves, we are going to begin to notice an omega block pattern developing across the western tier of the United States. This is something we see a lot more during the summer than anything, and that's because these omega block patterns usually bring a lot more heat waves to the United States. So we're actually going to be seeing the potential for a heat wave as we go to the end of this month into early next month. It won't be super hot by any means. I mean, we're not talking 100-degree temperatures, but we are talking for the potential for temperatures to be upwards of 20 to 30 degrees above normal. So that'll be something to watch for out of the system. In addition to this, we also need to be watching this very strong Pacific jet stream. What this system will be responsible for is bringing multiple storms and having them crash into the west coast of the United States. And because we have this strong ridge in place back over in the Rocky Mountains and on the west coast, a lot of those storms, they're going to crash into the west coast, and that's it. They're not going to get anywhere past that. And even if they get there, that's going to be the other thing. They actually could go up here to the north and east and entirely miss the United States. So we're going to have to watch this trend very closely over the next few days. But once we even go closer to the midweek, this pattern is going to still stick in place. This is your high pressure system. Again, notice the ridge back up here to the north. That's going to keep many areas across the United States dry, but the one exception to this, if you're in the northeast United States or the upper Midwest, you might actually get an Arctic blast or two as we get closer to the end of this upcoming work week. And that is because this omega block pattern will be lifted up here to the north and further out to the west, that this will actually allow for some cold air to actually usher in from a couple of cold air masses. And that could actually bring the potential for some snow as well to areas like the northeast. And we'll talk about more details on that later in this forecast. And then eventually, as we get closer to the first weekend of February, this omega block pattern will begin to weaken, and as that wall of energy starts to weaken, this will allow for more storms to come out of the Pacific Ocean and eventually make our active weather patterns start to come back again as we go into the first full week of February. So that'll be what we're looking at here over the next couple of weeks in terms of the overall weather pattern. Now let's talk a bit more about what the temperatures are going to look like across the country. Beginning with the temperature anomalies, this gives us an idea of how above or below average in terms of temperatures we will be. This is the 850 millibar temperature anomaly chart, and notice overall, even this weekend, we'll have a little area of cold air advection on the backside of this trough. That'll lead to some below average temperatures, but it's going to be pretty close to average overall for those back from Texas all the way through parts of the lower Ohio Valley and into the Dixie Alley. But overall, above average temperatures will continue throughout much of next week. We will have some cold air back over in the southeast. Perhaps a cold front or two will impact areas down in like Florida, Georgia, and South Carolina, keeping some of those areas a bit chillier as we go into Wednesday and Thursday. But notice very above average temperatures across the northern tier of the United States and even back into Canada. And then as we get into the following week, so really the first full week of February, we will likely start to see more of an El Nino pattern kick back in again with below average temperatures for the southern tier of the United States, and then for the northern tier of the United States, above average temperatures would be likely. Now, in terms of the actual temperatures in the United States, these are the temperatures that we're looking at, for example, tomorrow for high temperatures. Many areas from New Jersey back into Texas will be in the 50s, 60s, 70s, and perhaps even a couple of 80s back down in Florida. And then once we go into Sunday into Monday, notice that warm air moves out. We're actually going to be a little bit below average for high temperatures going into Tuesday. Warmest state will actually be back over in Texas. You could say Arizona and California will be warmer, but the entire state, in fact, will not be necessarily as warm. And then as we go into Wednesday to Thursday, again, still overall pretty average. But notice this, by Wednesday afternoon into the evening hours, we're actually going to have a huge pocket here of well above average temperatures. Look at Montana. Mid 50s are possible. That is insane regarding this type of weather, because a couple of weeks ago, you remember that record-breaking Arctic blast? Back over in Montana, we were 50 to 60 degrees below zero. Not even just below average, below zero. So really flipping the script entirely back up in Montana in terms of temperatures. And then we'll be watching again for the potential for an Arctic blast back over in the Northeast as we go into the later half of the following week, and as well as going into the first weekend there of February. Now, in terms of the temperatures from the Climate Prediction Center, this is their forecast for the next several days. This is going to be from Wednesday the 31st until Sunday the 4th. Right now, above average temperatures are likely for much of the United States. The only exception really at this point being Florida. I would even say the Northeast has really a 50-50 chance of being either above or below average for temperatures. And then going from February 2nd all the way until February 8th, the Climate Prediction Center still keeping much of the United States above average in terms of temperatures, anywhere east of the Rocky Mountains, and then west of the Rocky Mountains with that atmospheric river event, we'll be looking at below average temperatures for much of those areas. Now, if you're wondering who exactly will be seeing showers and storms and who will be seeing snow, this is a segment for you, because what we're looking at Friday and Saturday, we're going to be looking at showers and storms across the southern tier of the United States. This low pressure system, it's an upper level trough. It'll start to develop more as we go into Saturday. That'll allow for maybe a few isolated severe storms across Alabama and Georgia, so be mindful of that. Isolated damaging winds, perhaps a tornado or two being possible. Once we go into Sunday, this low pressure system rolls off to the north and east. It actually will intensify as we go into Sunday, and we will see the potential for some snow from about West Virginia and Western Virginia all the way back into parts of southern New England. That'll bring a few inches of snowfall up that direction. Once we go into Monday into Tuesday, things dry out for the United States overall. But again, we might get an Arctic air mass to move through the Northeast as we go into Tuesday. And if that all ends up happening, we will see some snow with this. Overall, not a winter storm, but there will be some light to moderate snow that could come out of that for areas from Michigan all the way back into the Northeast. I'll have more details on that in a later forecast if that ends up materializing. And by the following weekend, things become a bit more uncertain, but it does look like we'll start to get a much more active weather pattern going into the first full week of February. And for those in the Southeast, this is a little bit more of a detailed timing guide for that severe weather potential. Overall today, not going to be too crazy. We'll have some showers and storms along the immediate Gulf Coast. Once we go into Saturday morning, we'll be watching for a line of storms to develop from about Mississippi, that's central Mississippi, back into southern Louisiana. That is where a few severe storms will be possible as we go into Saturday morning, but that threat of severe weather will ramp up a little bit more near lunchtime Saturday between the borders basically of Alabama and Georgia. I'm not overly confident that we're going to really see anything too significant out of this, but there might be some isolated damaging winds, perhaps an isolated tornado as well. And then once we go later into the afternoon and evening hours, things start to clear out with that line of storms. We'll be watching for a few more storms behind that. Those could also produce an isolated threat of severe weather going into Saturday evening. So be mindful of that. That's the current time guide for this severe weather event. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to hit the like button down below and subscribe if you've not already.